Hey everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is your Right Angle Lightning Round. Now, this segment used to be for members only, but the members demanded that we release this to the general public. So let me fill you in on what we do. Usually on Right Angle, we select one topic each for the week, and we talk about it on our backstage segment. So we get an idea of what everybody wants to say, and we have a nice little solid footing going into each segment, or at least as solid as you could expect from the three of us. For the lightning round, instead of going into one topic that we've already hashed out a little bit backstage, I plucked 4 headlines, 2 for Scott, 2 for Bill, and they have absolutely no idea what it is I've selected for them. And so there's a little mystery and a little fun. And these are stories that might be smaller or just too strange to go in depth for 8 or 12 or 15 minutes on a regular segment, but are nonetheless fun to talk about. And that's what I try and keep in mind when I pick these headlines.
The way Steve describes that makes it sound like it's noble and dignified and virtuous. And
it's none of those things.
Audience, it's not going to be like that.
Plain laziness.
I picked fun headlines for Bill, and then I pick headlines for Scott, which I think will annoy him.
Okay, let's get going.
So, indeed, let's. Bill, we're going to start with you this week. Oh, I pulled this headline from, I can't remember where. U.S. trade deficit drops 4.7% to 5-month low. Now, I'm not one of these people who actually worries about the trade deficit that much. I like trade. I don't like trade with communists that much because they steal and then they invade people and all that stuff. That said, but this is what's interesting. The second part of the headline says, helped by first oil surplus since 1978. What do you say about that?
I say go frackers,
yes,
go
indeed.
Drillers, go American ingenuity. We, even as recently as, well, certainly as recently as the Iraq war, we had to be very careful as a nation on what we did because we had a knife to our throat, and that knife was being held by OPEC and the oil producing
the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries.
That's what I said. But we can all remember a time when everybody was basically saying America is so dependent on foreign oil. It is in fact just the noose that we had our head stuck in. And then along comes some private companies and some engineers and some good old American ingenuity, and they figure out a way to get oil from where there was simply no way to get it before. Now, obviously, oil from shale and all the rest of this stuff is not as cheap as the stuff that's coming out from the ground. But if the stuff that's coming out from the ground gets priced so high, then all of a sudden these alternative oil sources start to make economic sense, and we develop the technology. And now the number one consumer of energy in the world is also going to be the number one exporter of energy in the world, which is just plain rock and cool as far as I'm concerned.
It really, really is. You know, Glenn Reynolds, Instapundit, noted a couple of years ago that it used to be we had to have the Navy, a big, strong, powerful Navy, to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. Otherwise, the whole global economy would collapse. And now all we have to do is be able to shut it down, and it would really be China that paid the most. Scott, you look like maybe you wanted to jump in there.
No, I was just saying, Bill's right. It's much more difficult to get shale oil and to recover this deep under the surface of the earth through fracking. In the old days, when Bill and I were kids, you could just be out.
You just poke a stick in the ground.
You could just be out there shooting at some food, and up through the ground came a bubbling crude.
Oil, that is.
I'm sorry, I stepped on the last line of the song. My bad.
No,
Scott,
I just said Texas tea.
Let's go to you. Suzanne D. Ariano, who I'd never heard of before, but apparently she's a writer of some note, had a headline story today at Real Clear Politics. It says, as a Latino, I no longer feel safe in Trump's America, so I'm leaving it. What is it you suppose she wants to leave the most? Is it the record low Latino unemployment? Is it the continuing declining crime rate? Or is it the taco truck on every street corner that she thinks is the most hateful part of Trump's America?
Just wait a minute. Before I answer that question, I need to become a writer of some note.
There you go.
Okay, I've written some note.
Now, you can be a regular politics.
I think, It's funny because I work in the real world as well as doing this. And I work in a large retail environment. And a fairly large number of my colleagues are people who are bilingual and who's, if not first generation, second generation immigrants from Spanish-speaking countries. And what I have found among those of my colleagues is they're ordinary human beings, and we don't have any kinds of problems among ourselves, and there's certainly none of them.
There goes my racism.
There's just not a whole lot of, Trump-driven tension among my so-called Latino. And by the way, that's kind of a phrase that even Latinos don't care for too much. Yeah. But it's just... I think that this woman of some note has gotten too caught up in reading and watching things that are fanning the flames of her own discontent. It's not something that's actually happening on the ground. It's something that's being whipped up. There is always a grievance industry that is interested in getting some people upset about something so that they can, get more donations to their not-for-profit organization or get, more campaign funds or whatever. And I think it's frankly really sad because what you're doing is you're taking a bunch of people who came to this country for awesome reasons, great folks who are willing to work hard, and you're saying, hey, you know that thing you've dreamed about all your life that you spent 15 years trying to get here? Well, it just sucks, and I want to go back to my home country. You're peeing on the parade that other people have come to enjoy. And so I guess I would say I have no problem with this lady going back to her country of origin or her family's country of origin. I would only ask that she go quietly.
Yeah. Scott, you reminded me
and rapidly.
This is only on
punctually.
topic. But you reminded me of my favorite thing that I ever wrote about Barack Obama. He had to be the corpse at every wedding and the bride at every funeral.
To paraphrase Lou Holtz.
Just a little bit. All right, Bill, over to you. Our buddy Kurt Schlichter put up something on Twitter today. There was a horrific crime in Mexico yesterday that I'm not even going to describe. Just you probably saw the headlines already, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But in reaction to this, Donald Trump said some very strong things regarding the Mexican drug cartels. And our buddy Kurt Schlichter said on Twitter today, the way to deal with the ultra-violent Mexican cartels is to treat them the way Cortez treated the Aztecs. Ally with the decent people they were murdering and then kill every last one of them.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, as we watch Mexico descend into cartel madness, is it going to come to that?
I've been recently, because my stepdaughter is only able to visit. She's got Russian nationality. She's not able to get a tourist visa into the United States for some reason. So we've met twice in Mexico over the last 4 or 5 months. Nice. In Cancun. And every time I come back from Cancun, I am so motivated to sit down and write some lengthy piece, basically entitled "Mexico Can Really Work," because it really can. My dad was a hotel manager. I grew up in hotels. I've never seen better hotel service. I've never seen better hotel attitude. I've never seen anything remotely like as pleasant an experience as we had in Cancun. And it's not just the hospitality industry. You go to the airport, and I'm watching the guys who are marshaling the planes, and they're doing a much better job than the folks I see at LAX. They're much more professional and so on. So Mexico can work. And can make a lot of money and can become a major economic powerhouse. But the problem with Mexico is their government, kind of like our problem up here. The Mexican government has traditionally been so corrupt and has been so corrupt for so long that just as in the Soviet Union with that kind of corruption, there literally becomes a pervasive sense, not of that I don't want to work, but rather that if I work hard, I'm either going to have my money stolen from me or I'll be killed. And until you remove those negative incentives, you cannot expect the Mexican people to follow the same general rules that all humanity follows, which is why capitalism works so well. Like, I'm going to work harder for my benefit of myself and my family. In Cancun, it is astonishing how excellent that service is. And it could be that way throughout the entire country. But number one, the Mexican government has got direct corruption. And one has to think, given how violent and nasty these people are, somebody in the government is being paid not to use military forces to kill these murdering swine. I'd be all in favor of, because I happen to think that this is genuinely the United States' greatest single national security issue is our border with Mexico. I would be more than willing, if I was President Trump, to deploy whatever drone assets we have, whatever aircraft assets we have, and even special forces teams. I wouldn't put troops there. I'm not that stupid. I don't want to occupy the country.
Oh, God,
but in cooperation, obviously in cooperation with the Mexican government, I think a military operation is in order to protect the southern border of the United States. And when you see signs during the Obama administration, 40 miles inside of the United States territory, saying this area is dangerous due to armed drug smugglers, and instead of actually going down there and killing these bastards, you're going to put up public service signs saying you can't drive in this part of America, Mr. American, because the foreign occupation army with its weapons is making this area a little dangerous. It's time to get serious about this. Yeah. And it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. These Zetas and the Mexican cartels really, really do rival ISIS as not only the worst people in the world, but maybe the worst people in the history of the world.
Just awful. And I have to tell you, if I were to retire anywhere outside of the United States, it would be this little sandbar of an island, Isla Mujeres, off the coast of Cancun, where my wife and I have been 3 times now. We've been to Cancun, Playa del Carmen area probably 8-9 times over the last 15 years. We just love it there. We love the scenery, and mostly we love the people who are just
genuinely warm people who are not doing it for the buck. You can tell the difference. They're genuinely warm people. And Mexico could be so successful.
Yeah.
It could be so successful. But the problem's at the top.
The places where capitalism have taken root are successful. It's just a damn shame what's going on elsewhere. Scott, to you. Oh, Lord, I hate this story.
Thank you.
Britain's National Health Service, not the entire National Health Service. It's starting at the North Bristol Trust, which is a fairly major section of the NHS, has announced that it will withdraw treatment from patients that it deems to be racist or sexist, and it'll determine this based on things like public statements or even gestures. How's that Medicaid
They will
for
not
all
provide.
looking?
They will not provide medical care to people based on whether they think they're racist or not.
Yep.
So I'm just picturing the scene in the hospital room. No, doc, don't turn off the machine. Some of my best friends are black people.
Okay.
What is, this is nothing but the natural fruit of a socialized medicine program. And folks, those of you who think that we'd be better off by giving more authority and responsibility in the hands of the government, a lot of you think that because you just think, well, I'd be able to get healthcare for free, or I'd be able to get healthcare for cheap, and I can't get it now, or I can't afford it now. And so you see only the good side. The side you don't see is what really happens in places where they've nationalized the healthcare industry. And that is that the government is into every aspect of your life. And if you have ever said anything that you think might be considered politically incorrect at any time, you could be on the short list to, as President Obama used to say, take the pill. You could wind up being that person that they said, well, we only have so much government money to go around, and we've got to keep people alive. And so we only want to keep alive the best sorts of people. And I'm sorry, you fell just short of that on the best sorts metric. You're a 65, and you really needed to be a 68 to make the threshold to keep the machine pumping. So we're just going to have to yank the plug. This is the natural consequence. And I do not exaggerate in this. This is the natural consequence of giving government responsibility for healthcare. It's why when I was a county commissioner back in Pennsylvania, I wanted to explore whether there was a better way to run the county nursing home, because I saw year after year that nursing home into which we entrust our loved ones being treated like some sort of political football. And I didn't want that in the hands of a bunch of politicians who are motivated not to save people's lives or offer the best possible care, but to merely get reelected.
Yeah, and you know what,
Steve, I'd like to add just one thing to this. In America, for all of the horrible union of government and business that the American health industry, insurance industry is, if you don't like the way you're being treated by your insurance company or your hospital, you can go someplace else. We're talking about Britain here. We're not talking about Venezuela. We're not talking about
birthplace
we're not
of
talking
liberty.
about Yemen, right? So, but here's the thing that needs to be said: if you have a national healthcare system, you would say, well, I don't have a choice. There's no place else to go. I don't have another government I can go to. But it's worse than that, because we've seen in the last couple of years, we've seen several cases where people were condemned to death by the National Health Service in Great Britain. And when they tried to seek private help, they would not allow them out of the hospital. You are going to stay here and die in this prison because we told you that that's what your medical outcome is going to be. And that young boy, Guest was his last name, I suppose. So. Who they offered to fly him to get private treatment, no cost to the government, no cost to the hospital, and they locked that kid in the hospital until he died, because that ability for that kid to go out and get outside treatment would make the government look bad. So if you think this is a good idea, you better start thinking a little harder.
And one other thing, just on when the issue isn't life and death, just regular medical care, people get in fights with their provider, with their health insurance company all the time. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The difference is, if healthcare is socialized, you're fighting over the same pool of tax dollars, not just with other patients, not just with your provider or your insurer, which are now both the government. You're fighting over the same pool of tax dollars with everybody, from a welfare recipient to Lockheed Martin's army of lobbyists. It's all the same pool of money, and God only knows if you're going to get your share out or not.
And if you think if your last name is Trudeau and you think you're going to stand in line the same as any other Canadian citizen, you got another thing coming.
Yeah. All right. Last headline. This one's just for me. Oh, I love this one. Donald Trump Jr. said on CBS this morning, he was asked, who is your favorite Democrat? And he paused for just a half beat and said, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, I got burned by that guy so badly in 2012. I put so much hope in this guy that he was the guy who was going to beat Obama and save us from another 4 years of just cruel ineptitude. And then he turned out to just be a complete sellout. He barely waged a campaign. It was so sad. And I was so burned that it really blinded me to the possibilities of Donald Trump in 2016. And I've apologized for that before. I'll apologize for it again now. I just like to say that the times we live in are so crazy that a established businessman and family man through and through like Mitt Romney is just virtually a corrupt Democrat. And Donald Trump, who spent the 80s and 90s living a really sordid love life on the front pages of every tabloid in the world, is currently my favorite Republican. How the hell did we get here? I don't know, but we are, and it's been a hell of a ride. Thanks for being on it with us. If you like content like this, please become a member at BillWhittle.com. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.